Brazilian Grand Prix of 1994 was the last time any World Championship F1 race was won by over a lap. As the Sao Paulo circuit sits 800 meters above sea level, the race mechanics have taken altitude into consideration. The cars here require more downforce than they do at sea level. And although the
Alright, welcome everyone. Today is a friendly event. It's LFR versus IRT in a 10v10 here at Brazil. I'm your commentator, More Games. And yeah, let's just get straight into it. We're into qualifying and the first drivers are starting to get out on track. And it's going to be exciting to see what the liveries are like. And IRT, we're very excited to show everyone what their livery is like. So let's see who is out on track first. And it looks like the LFR driver of LFR Jam is the first man out on track. You can see a nice Gulf type livery for LFR. Meanwhile, IRT have a dark blue and a bit of white on the side pods. So some nice liveries from both of the teams. It's going to be exciting to see them both in action, but it looks like LFR Jam is going to be the first man to set a lap time, but it looks like he might let his teammate overtake him, and that's exactly what he's going to do. So that's LFR Blaze who overtakes Jam, and now he is going to be the first man to start his lap time. So let's see what kind of time he can do coming into the final turn now and getting ready to start his first lap time of the session. Let's see how fast can he go as he crosses a line now. We're coming down into turn one. Can he spot his braking point quite nicely? Goes a little bit wide there, doesn't hit the apex as much as he maybe would have liked to. Doesn't take as much curb at turn two of the Senna S's either, but we are now on to the DRS straight. Oh, and I've just switched off him there. We now come into turn four, hitting that apex much nicer, using the full width to track, a little bit of wheel spin, but is able to keep it under control. We now come into the double right-hander of turn 5 and 6, bringing us to the middle sector, and we're now into turn 7 and the ups and downs of turn 8, and now back uphill into turn 9. Looking like a decent lap so far from Blaze, as hitting that apex quite nicely, as we are now approaching the final sector. The tyres start to get quite hot towards the end of this lap time here at Brazil, with a lot of high speed and flowing corners, but we're now into the final turn, getting ready to finish the first lap time of the session. What kind of time can Blaze put on the timing boards? And it looks like a 107.7 from Blaze, and he is the first man to set a lap time. Is anyone else going to be able to beat that? Looks like Hyper is 2/10 behind with a 107.9. He is the second man to set a lap time, and now a couple more are going to start coming in. Looks like DNH Gel is with a 108.4, 6/10 off of Blaze provisional pull time so far. We're going to try and find someone else on a lap time. It looks like IRT Seb has just started his, hitting that apex very nicely and using plenty of curb going into turn 2. So it's a good first sector from Seb, but now let's see what can he do coming into the middle sector. Now into turn 4 we go, hitting his braking point a bit too late, misses that apex slightly, and it looks like he just about goes wide on exit, and that is going to be an invalidation for Seb. So he's going to have to go for a cool down lap and go for another hot lap later on in the session. Meanwhile, quite a few more times have been posted. LFR Marnix and Rick Dalton getting into the 107.8. It looks like Marty wasn't able to set a proper lap time with a 130.9, and that was one of the LFR drivers getting in the way of him. Not too sure who that was. Let's check in now with the IRT driver of Stevan, and let's see how fast he can go on his first lap time of the session. We come into the first turn, and the Senna S's to start us off in this Interlagos circuit. A bit of a lockup going there, and he goes quite wide into turn 1, doesn't use a lot of curb at turn 2. That is going to cost him about 6/10 just in those first 2 turns, so he's going to have to make it up in the middle and final sector. Let's see if he can. Goes a bit wide into that turn 4, doesn't use the full width of the track there on exit, so not going too well for him just yet, but let's see what he can do with the rest of his lap. That's a bit of a slide going through that double right-hander at turn 6, and we now come into turn 8. A nice slingshot line there to get himself the best exit possible. Turn 9, that's a bit of a lock-up going into there, getting on the power just a bit too early, and it's quite a messy lap so far from Stevan, and he only has so many turns left to go as we now come into the final left-hander of turn 12 to end off this lap, and it's going to be interesting to see what kind of time he can set with this lap. Obviously it's only his first lap of the session, he's going to have plenty of time to improve. It's a 108.9, and sadly 5 tenths off of the closest driver, which is his teammate IRT Derry, so not the best banker lap for him, but there's plenty of time in the session to improve. Looks like LFR Mitch is now about to begin his lap and giving himself the best exit possible, going over the line. And we now come into this turn 1. It looks like another lockup, so quite a few drivers struggling with lockups, and then just got on the power a bit too early, and it looks like he tried to have his foot flat to the floor, and it did not work out for him. That is a spin at turn 3. His teammate behind him, LFR Jaum, is now about to set his first lap time of the session after what I can only assume was invalidating his other run. So we now come into turn 4. He's actually got a purple sector 1, not taking a lot of curb there going into turn 4. LFR Blaze has actually retired from the session, and I think that's a spin at turn 3 on the exit of turn 2, so he is now out of the session, and that 107.7 is going to be his final lap time of this qualifying session. So far it's good enough for a provisional pole, but I don't think that's going to last. He's got his teammate LFR Guige just a couple of 1,000s behind him, and it looks like Hyper has now retired from the session. LFR Jam has just set a purple middle sector. This is looking like a good lap so far, but now we have lost one LFR driver and one IRT driver out of this session, and their first lap times are going to be their only lap times. Jam coming across the line, it's looking like a fastest lap. It is. It's a 107.6, and it puts the LFR driver on provisional pole position with just around 10 minutes to go in this session. So that's a good, it's a strong banker from him. I'm sure he's going to be happy with that, and he'll be looking to improve later on in the session. It looks like LFR Marnix currently P4 with a 107.8, looking to go for another lap time and see if he can improve on his banker time, which I'm sure he can. So let's see what he can do on this lap now. Coming into turn 1 and the Senna S's, a lot of drivers struggling with lockups into there, and Marnix is another one of them. Takes a lot of curb going into that turn 2. Took that really nicely. He's getting a nice bit of slipstream off of one of his teammates coming into turn 4 now. That's going to gain him some lap time. He is 6/100ths up on his time. So right now looking to move up into P2 and displacing Blaze and Gish. So we now come into the double right of the turn 5 and 6, which then brings us into a triple right of turn 7. But we're now coming into turn 8 now. A nice slingshot line is what we're seeing from a lot of the drivers here, and it looks like that's one of the LFR drivers pointing in the wrong direction. He's reset to track there at turn 9. So I'm not sure who that was, but they're going to have to go again. That looks like an IRT driver who's also spun on entry to the final turn. So a lot of drivers struggling. That's an IRT driver going slowly there. So you can see a lot of yellow flags on this very short circuit. It's hard to find a bit of space for yourself to set a lap time, but Marnix has found a decent bit of space and he's been able to use it to full extent. He sets a 107.5, and that displaces his teammate. That's one of the LFR drivers spinning at turn 3. That's LFR Scotty at turn 3, who's had a spun there, who just began his lap time. So right now it is an LFR 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, with the highest IRT drivers being in P7, P8 and P9, one of which has actually retired from the session. So IRT are going to be looking to improve their lap times quite a bit now in this second phase of the session, and hopefully they can improve on some of their lap times. But let's try and find another driver who's currently on a lap time. It looks like Nicholas has invalidated his time. Marty is currently on a lap time, if I'm not mistaken, as using the full width of the track there on the exit of turn 8. Now coming into turn 9 and 10. And let's see how much he is improving by coming out of the third sector. It looks like he's improving by 3/10. So this is a decent lap time from the IRT driver. It looks like Guige just went P2 and he's 1/1000 behind his teammates. So that is how close it is at the top in the battle for pole position at this circuit. Marty comes across the line. He's able to set a 108 flat. That puts him P9 in the session. And it looks like LFR Rom has just come across the line to begin. No, I think he's just finished the lap time actually and gone P10. So he's setting a 108.1. You can see 3 drivers still have not set a lap time in this session, and they'll be looking to do so soon enough. One of which is Chris, currently on his out lap, coming into turn 7, trying to find another driver who is currently on an out lap. Looks like Rick Dalton is on a out lap, but so is Jam, and he is getting nice and close to the line, getting ready to begin another lap in this session. You have 4 sets of softs now with the new tyre rules, so you have plenty of laps to be doing in qualifying. Hitting that apex up turn 1 quite nicely, using plenty of curve on turn 2. And he took those center S's quite nicely there on this lap. Let's see how much that has helped him improve by. That 6/100th he's up on his time, so he's looking at an improvement so far. LFR Scotty manages to go P4 after his spin at turn 3. We now come into turn 6 and 7, or turn 5, 6 and 7, the triple right-hander, and taking that quite nicely for himself, as we see another slingshot line going through turn 8 and then using the full width of the track to give himself the best exit possible. We now go into turn 10, and let's see how much is he improving after the middle sector. It'll be interesting to see. He is almost a 10th up on his time, so this could be a decent lap time from the LFR driver as we now are about to round off the lap. This could be a provisional pole time. We'll have to see as he's getting ready to cross the line. What kind of time is it going to be? It's a 107.4, and that, whoa, choking on my own spit after that. That is going to put him on provisional pole position by a 10th over LFR Marnix and Guige. So that is a very good lap time from LFR Jam, and with 5 minutes left in the session, there's not too much time to beat it. So the drivers will be looking to set better lap times to try and get in for that battle for pole position. So far, the lead IRT driver Gel is about to come into the final turn and getting ready to start one of his final laps of the session. We now come down into turn 1. Let's see how well he can take this. And it looks like just missing that apex slightly, taking a decent bit of curb at turn 2. But that was a big lift going into turn 3. And after the space of just 2 turns, I think he's already abandoned his lap time. So that just goes to show how important every turn is, especially at a track like this, where you're setting lap times close to 1 minute. So Gel is going to be going for a cooldown lap and getting ready to go for another lap in this session. It looks like LFR Marnix on his out lap, along with LFR Rom, who was in the final sector and getting ready to set another lap time in this session. We just have 4.5 minutes to go, and it looks like that's an IRT driver who spun at turn 3 there with the yellow flag in the first sector. So looks like not too many drivers are currently out on track. They're getting ready for the end of the session, where the track evolution is at its best. We see LFR Rom coming into turn 1, carrying a lot of speed into there and hitting the apexes quite nicely. So that's a decent, those are decent center S's from LFR Rom. And we could see a big improvement from the first sector. We'll have to see. He is 8/100th up on his time. It might not seem like much, but on such a short track, it means everything. Every single 100 counts at this track. And it looks like IRT Matt just finishes his lap time. He is now the lead driver for IRT in P7. but LFR Rom now coming into turn 8. A nice slingshot line, as we've seen with almost every driver that's done a lap at this track. And into turn 9, not hitting that apex too nicely, but using that exit curve to get himself the best traction possible. He is 3/10 up on his time with a purple middle sector, so this is looking like quite a decent time from LFR Rom. Let's see where this is going to put him in this session. It'll be interesting to see. It's probably going to be around the top 5, but across the line, it looks like a 107.7 puts him P5, but it looks like Gel has actually been disqualified from the session for driving the wrong way. So he was carrying the flag there for IRT in the lead until Matt overtook him in his qualifying session, but he is now disqualified for what I can only assume he spun the car and tried to get it facing in the right direction. So he will now be starting at the back of the grid, and that is a disappointing qualifying from him. I'm sure he won't be too happy with himself. LFR Marnix goes fastest with a 107.3, he's 1/10 clear of his teammate LFR Jam. So that's a very good lap time from him. And looking for another driver who's about to start their lap time, one of which is LFR Scotty coming into the final turn now. Although it doesn't actually look like he's getting ready to start his lap, as it looks like LFR Mitch has just retired from the session. So his best time was a 108.2, and that is what's going to stay for the rest of the session. Not sure what LFR Scotty is doing here. He's revving out at 4th gear on the straight, so not too sure what he's doing there. And his teammate is now coming through. Is he going to get out of the way? No, he was actually doing that on purpose because he wants to give his teammate a bit of a slipstream here. I'm not sure who this is. Trying to find out who this is. It was LFR Gige. So he gave his teammate quite a nice slipstream there, as LFR Marnix has now retired from the session. That's in the middle sector. Or is it? I'm not too sure where that is. It could have been in the pit lane, actually. That's an IRT driver almost spinning on the exit of turn 7. Gige has got a nice slipstream off of LFR Scotty in the first sector, and that's going to gain him quite a bit of time. He set a purple sector 1. That's a bit of wheel spin coming out of turn 9. We now come into turn 10. His teammates getting out of the way. He's only 5/100ths up on his time, and that's a big snap of oversteer coming out of the penultimate turn. That's going to lose him quite a bit of time. This might not be enough for pole position. He needs to improve by 2/10, and he has decided that is not enough. He's going to come into the pit lane. There's just 20 seconds left in the session. Jam has got out just in time and begun his lap time at the perfect time. He is the man who is currently challenging for pole position up against LFR Marnix. 107.3 is the time to beat. His teammate possibly trying to give himself his teammate a bit of slipstream, but not working out there in the end. LFR Jam coming through turn 4 now, and let's see how much time is there to gain on this 107.4. We now come into the triple right-hander of 5, 6 and 7, hitting all of these apexes quite nicely, actually a little too nicely. He cuts that turn 7 right-hander, and that is going to invalidate his lap time. So that is going to be Jam's session over. He's going to finish the session with a 107.4, currently good enough for P2, but will it stay that way? It looks like IRT Matt currently on a lap time in the middle sector now, coming into turn 9. He's currently leading the IRT drivers in this session and looking to improve on his 107.8. His teammate Pastor Jasper goes P9 and sets the exact same time as IRT Matt, but Matt is looking to improve on this final lap. Let's see just how much he can improve on this final lap time of the session using the shortest run to the line. Now, what kind of time is it going to be? It's a 107.8. It's a 4/100th improvement, but sadly not enough to improve his position. So he will be the highest placed IRT driver for this Brazilian Grand Prix, but it's only P8 and 5/10 off of pole position. So LFR doing quite nicely for themselves in qualifying, securing the top 7 positions, with IRT securing the bottom 5. So it looks like LFR has really got that one lap pace down to a T, but the qualifying session isn't where the points are scored. So could we see the IRT drivers possibly convert some lower down qualifying positions into some higher points paying positions? It's all to play for in this friendly 10v10 at Brazil, and that is your qualifying session over with LFR Marnix getting pole position with a 107.3. That is an absolutely rapid lap time from the LFR driver, 1/10 clear from his teammate LFR Jaum, and the Dutch driver will be taking pole position in this session. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Guige getting P3 with Rick Dalton, who will be starting alongside him. LFR Scotty starting P5 with his teammate Rom beside him. Blaze and Mats starting on the same row of the grid. Pastor Jasper and Hyper rounding out the top 10 positions. IRT Derry and Marty starting P11 and 12. Nicholas and Keke starting P13 and 14. Mitch and Chris in P15 and 16. Boomp and Stepian in P17 and 18, and Sieb and Gel, after sadly getting disqualified from qualifying, will be starting at the back of the grid for this Brazilian Grand Prix. But the drivers are now getting their cars onto the grid and getting ready to start the formation lap for this race. And remember, the formation lap is very important in the game. It's quite crucial to heat up your tires and make sure that they're in the right operating window. But it's also important with a new feature in this game that you actually have to park in your own grid spot. So making sure that you get as close to the yellow line as possible is absolutely crucial, so you can start further ahead. And if you get it wrong, you'll be starting a few meters back to where you should be. So the formation lap has a lot more risk involved, but I'm sure that these drivers can all get it right on this formation lap. So as you can see, the session is starting in just 25 seconds. Coming into this Grand Prix, we could see what I would assume a lot of drivers starting on the medium compound of tyres, because it gives you a lot of options towards the end of the race. You can decide if the tyre wear is a bit too heavy to go to hards a bit earlier on, or if the tyre wear is looking better than expected, you could be looking at a medium soft race. As you can see, the predicted pit stop strategy is a medium hard, as it is with most tracks, but we could always see one or two drivers going with the medium soft strategy. As you can see now, here are the tyre compound choices. We have the top 6 all on the medium tyres, and all the way from P7 to P11 have opted for the hard tyres. It looks like a bit of a 50-50 split between the drivers as to whether to go on the mediums or the hards. But obviously IRT have been putting their practice into these races and their strategies, and it looks like most of IRT have gone for the hard tyres, with most of LFR going for the mediums rather than the hards. So it'll be interesting to see which strategy works out better for them, and with both teams using different strategies, although there are the odd few like LFR Blaze and LFR Keke on the hards, and for IRT you have Boomp and Marty on the medium. So as you can see there, Marnix spinning the car at turn 12, turn 12, yes, I should say. And I think that's some aggressive tyre heating strategies from the LFR driver and the pole man for today's race, as we now see getting ready to park in his grid spot. And let's see how well can he do this, going down into neutral there at 4 seconds. You can see heating up his rears as best he can, but now lining up onto grid. How well does he get this? You can see there quite close to the yellow line. A couple of people getting disqualified from the session there, and that's the bottom two IRT drivers, Seb and Gel. Looks like LFR Scotty wasn't able to get it right, neither was Blaze, Nicholas, Marty, all messing up getting into their grid spots. They'll all be starting a few meters back compared to where they would have liked to be. But we're now getting ready for this Grand Prix. As you can see, the lights are getting ready to go out. Sadly, we can't see them. We're going to ride on board with LFR Marnix for the start. What kind of start is it for our pullman? It doesn't look like the best up against Jam, who's going to go down the inside into turn 1 now. And can he hold this position on LFR Marnix? It doesn't look like he can. Marnix is going to hold the lead going through turn 3 now. And you can see Rick Dutton, LFR Scotty, moving up quite a few positions into P4 now. And he's got Guige right behind him, who he gave a slipstream to in qualifying. You can see Pastor Jasper trying to go side by side. And it looks like Hyper has actually gotten the better of him and overtakes him for P8 in this race. Currently the leading IRT driver. He's going to be looking to make up some positions in this race. LFR Scotty getting quite close to the back of his teammate LFR Rick Dalton. And you can see the top 6 are all on medium compound tyres. So from 7th downward, they're going to have a little bit of a hard time keeping up with these medium runners. But you can see now that's a mistake, I think. No, it isn't. It looks like Marty was able to make up some positions, and Mats is now defending from Keke. And it looks like a bad exit from Keke, and Boom is now trying to take advantage of this. But his teammate is also trying to take advantage of it. Seb trying to make a move, doesn't make it work there. But we now see the drivers coming through turn 1 for the second time in this race as we enter lap 2 of this Brazilian Grand Prix, 2 of 36 laps. So we have a long Grand Prix for tonight. But let's see. It looks like Hyper had a little bit of a look down the inside there into turn 4, not thinking much of it, and doesn't commit to that move. And it looks like Marnix, Jam and Rick Dalton have all held position, if I'm not mistaken. Never mind, Rick Dalton has actually made up a position. Guige didn't have the best start there, and he fell down from P3 to P5. So it wasn't the best start from him. Someone who's had a good start is IRT Seb, moving from P19 to P15. Also Marty moving from P12 to P9. And Hyper, the lead IRT driver, moving up 2 positions from P6. So as you can see now, the hards are starting to show that they are slower, as Marty now on the medium compound tyres is actually able to overtake his teammate Hyper. And he moved himself up into P8. He is now going to be trying to catch up to the LFR driver of Blaze, who is on those hard tyres. So hopefully Marty does have the pace on those mediums. We'll have to see, as the gap is currently 1.5 seconds and falling. So it looks like he is gaining time. The mediums are going to be a lot faster than the hards, especially at this early stage of the Grand Prix. So I think for Marty, it's all about trying to drag his teammates from P8 to P12 and trying to drag them into the DRS of the top 7 LFR drivers. And let's see if he can do just that. The gap is currently 1.1 seconds. So he's very close to that DRS, which has now been enabled, and the drivers will be able to make use of it on this next main straight. So he needs to get into that DRS now. The gap is just 9 tenths. So will he make it before the detection zone, which is now coming up? It's the white line in front of him. Has he got himself into DRS? I think he has. But has his teammate behind Hyper got into the DRS? We'll have to see as we now come onto the main straight. Is that rear wing flap going to open? It doesn't look like it does. Whereas for Marty, it is wide open on this main straight. He's got himself into the DRS of the top 7. Sadly, Hyper wasn't able to follow him through. But it looks like Marty is struggling to maintain that gap, so he's going to have to push on and keep his head down to maintain that 1 second gap to the top 7, and hopefully make an overtake or 2. That's IRT Dairy going down the inside of Pastor Jasper into turn 4, and he makes his way into P10 in this Grand Prix. So making himself some positions in these early stages. We're only on lap 4 of this race, but the laps will fly by since they are so short at this Interlagos circuit. You can see Marty now on those mediums. He's able to maintain that 1 second gap. He's got himself into DRS. Looks like he's actually gaining quite a bit of time in the middle sector, and I think that's because of how many turns there are. That's a spin for Guige, and he's not got the best exit out of turn 11, and he has now spun his spawn way down the order. His teammate LFR Rom didn't get the best exit. Blaze takes advantage of that, and Marty is now right in the rear mirrors of LFR Rom, just 2 tenths behind. That's a big mistake and quite costly from Guige, who is now down in P14. So he's not going to be happy with that. You can see Marty is using quite a bit of his overtake now. He's got quite plenty of it to play with, but LFR Rom defending with a bit of ERS himself. So LFR Rom blocking off the overtaking opportunity from Marty. It looks like Hyper is now in the DRS of these drivers ahead and can hopefully get into that battle, as it looks like Gel and Steb has actually made a mistake at some point in their lap times as well, because they are down in P19 and P18. It looks like Keke has actually gone for another spin. He's down in P19 and struggling to get back on track. That's because his car is beached. He can't spin. He can spin the rear tires as much as he likes, but they're not actually making contact with the ground. And since his car cannot move, he's been disqualified from the session. So LFR Keke is now out of this Grand Prix because his car was beached on that curb at turn on the entry of turn 7. So that is a new thing that can happen in this game. You can beat your car in the gravel traps on certain curbs that are raised, and he is now out of this Grand Prix, and it's the first time I've personally seen a retirement like that. So that's a shame to see from LFR Keke, and he is the first retirement in this Grand Prix. So it looks like Blaze is trying to push hard to catch up to his teammates in the top 4. The gap is currently 2 seconds, but he is on those hard tires, so he's going to be quite a bit slower than his teammates. Hopefully the hards can start to phase in the next couple of laps. I think they'll be starting to get a little faster towards lap 10 or 13, somewhere in that range. But it looks like Marty has actually touched the curb on the inside of turn 11. That has caused him a spin, and the lead IRT driver drops all the way down to P14, possibly P15 if his teammate Chris overtakes him. And that's a shame to see, not being able to make the most of those medium tires. And he's now down in P14 after an unfortunate spin in the penultimate turn. So he will now be looking to recover in this race. Meanwhile, his teammate Hyper is no longer in the DRS because there is quite a gap between himself and LFR Rom, 1.4 seconds to be exact. So he's going to have to do quite the pushing to try and catch up to Rom and get himself into that DRS. And let's see if he can do just that, as coming through this middle sector, he is on the hards compared to LFR Rom, who is on those mediums. So yeah, I don't think he expects to be much faster at this stage of the race, but his tires will start to phase in the coming laps. That looks like a mistake there from Patser Japser, and he has actually fallen all the way down to P15 after a spin in the middle sector, which now turns to P16 as he's battling away with LFR Mitch. There's actually been an incident between them, and they are now down in P16 and P15 and falling because more IRT drivers are on the way. So Patser Japser has now fallen all the way down to P18 with Mitch making contact with him. He's now down in P15. So a lot of drivers making a lot of mistakes in this race. They really need to iron those out if they want to get themselves the best result. As you can see, everyone in the top 4 being extremely consistent, haven't made a mistake yet, and doing very nicely out in front. But I'm sure they will start to battle each other. I think that's a bit of a half spin there for LFR Rom, who now gets overtaken by Hyper, who takes advantage of that spin at turn 7. So Hyper, the lead IRT driver, is now up into P6 and quite a decent position for himself in this Grand Prix. LFR Rom in P7. His tires will be quite warm after that, so he needs to go a little slower to try and in an effort to try and cool them down. As you can see, there's not too many DRS trains up and down the field, as quite a few of the drivers have actually spread out quite nicely. That looks like a spin there for Steban. That was in the middle sector on the exit of turn 8, if I'm not mistaken. And he's lost quite a bit of time from that. Thankfully, he didn't lose any position, as he's already down in P18. That was a mistake there from Hyper, if I'm not mistaken. He's lost 2 positions as soon as we cut away from him. So he must have made a mistake in the first 3 turns. He's now been overtaken by LFR Rom and his teammate IRT Derry, who is now leading this race for IRT. But P7, P8 and P9 are all IRT drivers. They're going to be looking to work together to try and catch up to the rest of the LFR guys, and let's see if they can do just that. You can see Derry and Hyper are on those hards. They're going to start to phase in quite soon, probably in the next 3 laps, and then they will be faster. It looks like Blaze is able to get past Scotty, who actually makes a mistake, so it looks like the top 3 are now the only ones not to have made a mistake, because Scotty has lost about 2 seconds there and makes contact with his teammate, which really unbalances him. Tries to go for a switchback after that contact, but it doesn't work out for him. Hyper is now up into P7 after overtaking his teammate IRT Derry, and it looks like Guige is trying to make himself a recovery here, but he's now getting overtaken by Boom into turn 4, and Guige with the inside line. Can he hold this position? And with that inside line, he has the shortest run to this next triple right-hander, but IRT Boom with the inside line now. He now has the shorter run, but it looks like Guige with the more flowing line is able to maintain that P9 position. So he's going to be pushing on to try and catch up to IRT Derry. That's actually LFR Mitch, who was pulled into the pit lane and decided to retire from the session, and that promotes Pastor Japser into P18. That's the first 3-second time penalty of the race on lap 10. That's a spinner there at the penultimate turn. That's IRT Derry, who was battling it out with Hyper for P7, but he's now made that mistake and he's fallen all the way down to P14. So you can see a lot of drivers are making a lot of mistakes, LFR and IRT alike. So this is what these friendly events are for, to develop their racecraft and consistency, and to try and bring that into their events, which will be happening soon enough. You can see Boom overtaking Guige for P8 in this race, and Marty has now DNF'd from the session. That is a spin at turn 4, and that has brought out the safety car. Is that the virtual or the full course? That is the full course safety car, which is now coming out of the pit lane, and this is going to help a lot of drivers out. Not ideal for the top 3, but I assume anyone on mediums is going to be doing quite nicely for themselves, so they're going to be able to box and get on those hard compound tires. So as we said before, most of the LFR drivers started on the mediums, whereas most of the IRT drivers started on the hards. So this has not worked out in IRT's favor, and LFR, who were already pretty much dominating this race, have now got a free pit stop. Of course, the IRT drivers are going to come into pit lane. Boom actually was one of the odd ones out. He started on the medium, so this is going to work out quite nicely for himself. Hyper in P7, he's going to have to go onto mediums, which he's going to have to stretch for the next 24 laps, which is quite a way to go for these medium tires. You can see coming into pit lane, there's a bit of double stacking, because with these player cars, you cannot tell who your teammate is. So you come into pit lane, you just pray that you don't double stack with someone else. And it looks like Jaum has actually jumped Marnix in the pit lane. Not too sure how that happened. Marnix must have got held up by some other drivers. So Jaum now leads this race with Rick Dalton maintaining P3, Scotty into P4. IRT Derry has not boxed, and that is why he is in P5 in this race. So he still has a pit stop to make, and he is going to be losing out about 18 seconds to these other drivers, who now get a free pit stop on their safety car. It looks like Blaze has actually gone for an aggressive strategy. He's gone onto the soft compound of tires after starting on the hard, so he's probably going to be going from the softs to the mediums towards the end of this race. LFR Rom gets on a fresh pair of hard compound, or fresh set, sorry, of hard compound tyres. Hyper onto the mediums. Boom gets onto hards along with Gage and Nicholas, and Seb, Chris, Max, Gel, and Steban, I'm not too sure how to pronounce his name, have all gone on to the medium compound tyres. Is that a mistake there? That is a mistake from LFR Rick Dalton, and he has now been overtaken by quite a few drivers. He's dropped from P3 to P9, but you can see a lot of drivers having to let him through there. So P3 to P9, and he's obviously been too aggressive trying to heat up his tyres, so he falls all the way down to P9 after what must have been a spin in the final sector. So that's not the best for his race hopes, but that now promotes Hyper and IRT Boom into P7 and 8, and I'm sure they'll be quite happy with that. This is their chance to try and battle it out with some of the LFR drivers and maintain their DRS and hopefully battle for those top 5 positions. They're technically a net P6 and 7, since IRT Derry at P5 and 6, I should say, as IRT Derry and LFR Blaze both have a pit stop to make in this Grand Prix. So right now Boom and Hyper are in quite a bit good position. Sadly, Hyper had to go on to the medium, so he's not in the best of positions. He's going to have to stretch those tyres for quite a long time, but we'll be able to see if he's able to make it work out. Hopefully he can for his own sake, but let's see, is the safety car coming in this lap? No, it does not look like it is, because Patser Japser still has to catch up to the safety car before it is able to come back into the pit lane and let the racing resume. So right now, here is your grid. So far in this race, it looks like Chris actually pulls into the pit lane. I'm not too sure what tires he's going to go on. I guess we'll have to see. As you can see there on the left hand side, what tires will he be going on to? He goes back onto his old hard compound tires, so he's obviously made that pit stop so that he gets his mandatory pit stop in. But he's now gone back to the hard tires, which he's going to attempt to stretch until the end of the Grand Prix. So by the end of the Grand Prix, those are going to be around 32 lap old hard compound tires. Whether they can do that or not, it'll be interesting to find out. But right now, here's your grid. We have LFR Jaum currently leading this race after jumping Marnix in the pit lane, who is currently P2. LFR Scotty is in P3 after Rick Dalton making a mistake under safety car. IRT Derry, with a pit stop to make in this race, is in P4. LFR Blaze, with a pit stop to make, is in P5. LFR Rom in P6. Hyper on those mediums. He's going to try and stretch them until the end of the Grand Prix. Whether he can do that or not will be interesting to find out. Boom is in P8. Rick Dalton down in P9, and Guige in P10, and those are your top 10 points running runners. But yeah, as you can see now, the safety car is coming in this lap. Patser Japser is really hard to pronounce, but he's actually managed to catch up to the safety car just in time, as it is now coming in on lap 14. So let's see, when is Jam going to get this restart underway? It looks like it's now. Has he got a good restart up against Marnix? Maybe Marnix has him, but Scotty has, and Derry is going to try and get into this battle too. He tries to go down the inside of LFR Scotty, and it looks like that's a spin for Marnix. LFR Scotty and Derry making contact. Derry spinning the car. He hits into one of the LFR drivers. It's chaos all over the grid. That's another driver. That's Boom, who was doing so well. He is now hit into the wall. And is there any more drivers who want to spin in this race? It looks like IRT7 and Guige going side by side. Seb pushing him off of the track, giving his teammate Mats a chance. And Guige now coming into turn 5 and 6. Wasn't able to hold that around the outside. So A lot of drivers spinning there on the restart. It was hard to keep track of it all. That's a yellow flag in the middle sector. That's Chris, who's had a spin and is now tumbling down the order. As you can see here, it's very close in the midfield. Blaze is also one to watch. He has no pit stop to make, but he's going to be looking to make some overtakes before that happens. And well, let's see how the grid is now shaping up. But before we can do that, Seb is looking for a move, and so is Blaze. Blaze getting past Scotty on the main straight. What about Seb? He's able to overtake Nicholas on this main straight down the inside into turn 1. He's able to make that move stick, and you can see there Guiche absolutely flying into turn 1. Thankfully, he didn't hit into the back of his teammate. That's Steban into the pit lane. No, that's IRT Dairy into the pit lane for some fresh medium compound tires. But let's see how the grid is now after all those spinners. We have LFR Jam leading this race as he was on the restart. LFR Blaze has been promoted to P2, but he will be falling down the order after making his pit stop onto mediums. LFR Scotty is in P3s, just about outside the DRS of the top 2. LFR Rom in P4. Rick Dalton making his way back up into P5, getting 4 positions off of that restart. Seb moving all the way up into P6. Wasn't too sure where he was on the restart, but that's a good one from him. Guiche in P7, still looking to recover in this race. Nicholas in P8, and under pressure from Hyper, who's making a decent recovery after he must have spun on the restart. IRT Matt is now overtaking him as well. So much action going on in this midfield. This Hyper now looking for a move. IRT 7, Rick Dalton are battling away into turn 1, and so are Hyper and Guiche. Guiche really pushing Hyper wide there, but Hyper is able to get past, with Guiche trying to go for that switchback move, not really working out for him too well. We now see Gel trying to make a move on Nicholas into turn 4. You can see a lot of defensive moves coming into turn 4 with all the way from P8 to P11 all battling it out on track. You can see there's penalties so for IRT Mats and Gel, so they both have 3 seconds to their name, which will not help them. Blaze has now overtaken Jam for the lead in this Grand Prix, and so many overtakes going on up and down the track. IRT Seb is now looking to go on the attack up against Rick Dalton. Let's see what he can do coming into this penultimate turn of turn 11. He's not going to look to the inside, and he's got up on that curb, and I was going to say, getting up on that curb doesn't seem to work out for most people, but thankfully gets away with it, but not without a big time loss with his teammate now Hyper overtaking him in this race back into P6 and a net P5. Rick Dalton got quite close to the back of LFR Rom there. They could have made contact, not too sure. Wasn't riding on board with either of them. But let's see, into turn 4, are we going to see any moves from these drivers? Looks like IRT Matt is going to be looking for a move into turn 4, and not getting the best camera angle there from the broadcast, but Guiche is able to defend that position with the inside line, completely shutting down that move around the outside from Matt. And it looks like LFR Scotty has got himself a 3-second time penalty. Right now it won't affect him, he's been able to pull out a 4.3 second gap on LFR Rom behind him, so he's doing quite decently for himself in P3. Jam struggling to keep up with Blaze on those soft compound tires, who's absolutely running away with this race lead, but sadly it won't last for long, because once he comes into the pit lane he will be down to about P14, P16-ish, so yeah, so I don't know what my point was there. Anyway, yeah, he has another stop to make, so he's not in a net P1, which means Jam actually is, and with his closest competition having a 3-second time penalty, it looks like Jam has got this one in the bag. He'll be crossing his fingers in the hopes of not getting another safety car, as that could really ruin his chances. Rick Dalton, you can see the straight line speed of Rick Dalton there in P4. Or no, he's broke too late there into turn 4. He's gone wide, done a Max Verstappen, but thankfully hasn't collected LFR Rom. So he's going to maintain P5 with LFR Rom just going for a nice switchback into turn 4. He's now under pressure from Hyper in P6 on those medium compound tires. He's going to be faster at this stage of the Grand Prix, but once Rick Dalton's tires start to phase in, he'll be a lot faster, as Hyper really has to stretch those mediums if he wants to make it to the end of the Grand Prix, along with Seb and Matt. And Matt, sadly, with that 3-second time penalty. So you can see IRT are recovering quite nicely for themselves in this Grand Prix. They went from the top 7 positions in qualifying, all being LFR, to now just the top 5, and will soon be just the top 4. So you can see IRT have really done nicely for themselves in this race. I've actually missed that. Rick Dalton has got some crazy straight line speed. He must be running very low wings, because he dived down the inside as we were watching his rear wing view. So he now moves up into P4 on those high tires. You can see this is the battle for P4 on track between Rick, Rom, Hyper and Seb. All these drivers battling away to try and get themselves into that P4 position, which will eventually be a podium once Blaze comes into pit lane. That is a spin from LFR Rom at turn 7, and that has possibly damaged Hyper's front wing. You can see he's going very slowly there. Rom has fallen all the way down to P9. His tires are overheated and he spins the rears, and that is a bit of a rookie error from LFR Rom, and he's going to lose even more time. Hyper sadly falling down to P10. He was following nice and closely, but when you follow that closely and the driver ahead makes a mistake, there's really not much you can do. Has he got front wing damage, and will he come into pit lane? It doesn't look like it, so he will be staying out for now, but not without a massive time loss. So right now the top 4 positions belong to LFR, which will soon just be the top 3, and hopefully, or not hopefully, possibly the top 2, if Seb can push hard enough, overtake Rick Dalton and get within 3 seconds of LFR Scotty. It is a big ask, but it is definitely possible. You can see a big battle going into turn 4 here. This is LFR Marnix after that spin on the safety car restart, currently down in P12 and battling it away with Steban. So yeah, we haven't really seen much of Marnix's race since that spin on the safety car restart, and it looks like that's a lockup from Steban, which allows LFR Marnix to get a nice exit on him, move himself up into P11. You can see kind of cutting off Steb there, and he had to adjust his line accordingly, but he's now under pressure from LFR Rom after that mistake down in P13, looking to make it P12 if he can overtake Seb on this DRS straight. You can see he's using a lot of his ERS to try and make this move work, and then stops using it at the end of the straight, goes for a late dive, and it looks like he wasn't able to make that work, and he actually goes into the wall. So this has just gone from bad to worse, but you can see Steban being quite sportsmanly and allowing LFR Rom to go through. LFR Rom says, no, that's alright, you can have that position. So right now it's Steban P12 with LFR Rom right behind him in P13. You can see here Blaze has absolutely run away with this race lead, which sadly won't last for long, as I've said many times before. So Jam is currently leading this race. He's got a 2.6 second gap to LFR Scotty. Rick Dalton, if he can get within that 3 second gap of LFR Scotty, will be looking at P2 in this race. Blaze now comes into pit lane for some fresh medium tyres. IRT Seb will now be promoted to V4, and that is the lead IRT runner at this stage of the race, closely followed by IRT Matt, who sadly has that 3 second time penalty. He has got himself quite a nice recovery here after falling down to what was pretty much the back of the grid. Now back up to P6. I'm sure he'll be happy with his performance so far, although maybe not the fact that he spun in the first place and fell down so many positions. But you can see here Boom and Blaze going side by side after coming out of the pit lane. He's battling straight away. Push Boom almost off of the track there, pretty much actually off of the track there. And will this mean he gets up in a P9? Yes, it will. Probably not the best move, but he does it nonetheless. And with these fresh mediums, he really needs to make these moves so he can push on. You can see the gap ahead is 6 seconds to Hyper on those old mediums, so Blaze is going to have Some very good pace. You can see LFR, Rom, Steban, and Gel have all actually come in for soft tires. That's an interesting strategy from them. So they're going to be pushing those soft tires to the end. That's an IRT driver who has spun. I think that's actually Patser Japser, who is currently... no, that's Chris, who's currently a lap down in P13. Is it actually? No, it's not Chris. It is Patser Japser, and he's spun again. Currently a lap down this race. Really not what he would have been hoping for, and quite a disappointing result. I assume he is going to come into pit lane and retire from this session, but yeah, it's a shame to see when it really doesn't go your way, and being lapped like that, it's you know, quite crushing. But it actually looks like he's not going to be retiring from the session, unlike his teammate Gel, who's crashed in the middle sector, and he is now out of the session. As you can see there, the safety car pulling out of the pit lane almost instantly, and the safety car is now out for the second time in this race. Sadly, Patser is one lap down, so he won't be able to overtake the safety car, as the real life rules have not been implemented to the game where lap cars are allowed to overtake the safety car. Although, I'm not too sure. Anywho, we're looking at the pit stops now, because a lot of people have come into the pit lane. LFR Jam has opted to stay out on his old tires, and so has Hyper, and it was a big stretch for him in the first place, so quite surprising that he's actually decided to continue on. Currently in P3 we have LFR Blaze, who went from the softs to the mediums, and straight after the safety car has come out, so that strategy has worked out perfectly for him. And he started, well, where did he start? He started P7 in this race. He's done a really nice job for himself to get himself into P3 and a net P2, and he will have much faster tires than Jam, so this could be a big turning point in this race, and who knows, he could possibly win. But he will be under pressure from LFR Scotty on fresh soft tires, but he sadly has that 3-second time penalty, so maybe not the biggest threat in the field. Rick Dalton opting to stay out on the medium compound of tires, which are 11 laps old. IRT Seb now on the soft tires, and he'll be in it's between Hyper and IRT Seb for the leading IRT driver, because technically with Hyper's 3-second time penalty and the fact that he's on 13 lap old medium tires, I assume Seb will be able to make quite quick work of him, but only time will tell. So as you can see, the grid has been mixed up many times over throughout this Grand Prix, but we have Gage in P7 on those fresh soft compound tires, and IRT7 is actually the lead soft compound tire runner without any time penalty, so he is in a great position in this race. And from IRT not getting a single position in the top 7, they could be looking at one of their drivers winning this Grand Prix, and what an exciting end that would be. We're only going to have about 9 laps of racing, 10 laps if the safety car comes in this lap, although I doubt it will. You can see there on the mini-map quite a few people yet to come and catch the safety car queue. But you can see Guiche in P7, IRT Mats has actually removed his penalty. It must have been a 5-second time penalty, which he's been allowed to serve in the pit lane, so he is now on a clean slate, no time penalties, and that has really helped his chances in this race. And Nicholas in P9, we have Boop in P10, IRT Dairy staying out on the mediums down in P11. You know, being that far back, I don't think it was the best strategy. Being on those softs gives you a chance to make some overtakes, and since he's not currently in the points, I think it definitely would have been a gamble that he should have taken. LFR Marnix all the way down in P12, your pole man for today's race. Not had the best race so far. With fresh softs, he'll be ready to show everyone in this grid what he can do from what is essentially the back. Chris in P13 with the time penalty, Steban in P14, LFR Rom falling away all the way down to P15, and Patser Japser sadly is a lap down. That's someone coming into pit lane. That's Hyper, who's made that late call along with his teammate IRT Dairy. They've both made a late call, and opted, and this is probably the most unlucky thing I've ever seen. Only 2 drivers came into pit lane, and they were teammates as well. So sadly, IRT Derry has had to double stack, but Hyper comes out in P12, and I really could not tell you what he's doing. He's gone from old medium tires to old hard tires. Must have been a mistake. If I had to guess, it must have been a mistake changing his tires on his MFD, as surely that mustn't have been the strategy he was going for. I think he tried to go into softs, but then messed it up on his MFD. So he's now down in P12 on hard tires and has absolutely no chance in this race anymore. You can see a bit of a car park here in the middle sector, but that now promotes quite a few drivers. We have LFR Blaze now up into P2, and a clear shot at Jam. It's on those 15 lap old hard compound tires, so that should be easy work for Blaze. Scotty should also have some easy pickings on fresh soft compound tires. Rick Dalton is going to have to hold off quite a few drivers. You can see he's ghosted. He might have actually disconnected from the session, although I'm not sure. Hopefully he hasn't, and if he has, hopefully he can join back in time for the safety car restart. You can see it's absolutely unreal to see how many drivers are making these mistakes under safety car. That's LFR Scotty in an amazing position, P3 on fresh soft compound tires, and he's absolutely thrown it away by being too aggressive on the accelerator under safety car as well, and that's just a really disappointing mistake to make. You can see Rick Dalton has definitely disconnected from the session as his AI comes in for hard compound tires, old hard compound tires. So pulling a bit of a Hyper there, but you can see Hyper has corrected his mistake, come in for the soft tires, and he will now be at the back of the grid in P15. So yeah, just a really silly mistake there from LFR Scotty. That's dropped him to P9, and he's got almost no chance at points now because of that 3-second time penalty. So, and he's not the first driver we've seen spin under safety car. I think there's been a good 2 or 3 others. So yeah, any driver that hasn't spun under safety car has gained quite a few positions in this race. You can see Seb is now on the podium in this race. IRT doing quite nicely for themselves after starting P19 on the grid, the back row of the grid. He is now in P3, but his car is ghosted, and that can only mean one thing. I think he may or may not have disconnected from the session, and at the worst possible time too. He was in P3 all the way from P19, looking good to get a podium in this race, and sadly internet issues or lobby issues have struck, and he is now sadly out of the running for a podium and possibly the race when he was the lead soft compound tire running. This is the absolutely most devastating thing that has happened in this race. An IRT driver starting P19, getting all the way to P3, a clear shot at the race win with both drivers ahead, either being on harder compounded tires or older, and that's his race absolutely ruined. I've just realized I've had the audio glitch. My audio's been so low that I haven't actually noticed it, so sorry that you had to endure this, but that is Codemasters F122 for you. Boomp has actually retired from the session, and that is a spin on the exit of turn 2. So it looks like Blaze and Jam, and now that I noticed that audio glitch, it's actually extremely annoying, so I'm sorry that you've all had to listen to that for the entire time. But Jam is now in P1, defending from Blaze on those medium compound tires, and he's looking to get into the fight. LFR Scotty has actually made his way back up into P4, and it's absolute devastation for IRT. I'm pretty sure they had plenty more drivers in the top 6, but they've all dropped away. I'm not too sure. IRT Seb obviously disconnecting from the session. Chris has now spun, and he's lost quite a few positions because of that. He's now down into P13. You can see IRT Mats has now disconnected from the session. Was he the man in P3? No, he wasn't. So IRT Seb and IRT Mats, sorry, I had to confirm that there. They've both disconnected from the session, so you can see the lobby issues and the lobby struggles are real in this race, and almost everyone is ghosted. You can see there, we have LFR Jam, Blaze, Gish, Scotty, Brom, Hyper, Steban, all still in this race. IRT Seb is not in this race. LFR Marnix is disconnected. Chris is still here. Rick Dalton has disconnected. Nicholas disconnected. Derry's still here. IRT Mats has disconnected, and Patser Japser is still in this race. So that is a total of one. No, Mats has actually been able to reconnect. If I'm not mistaken, he was disconnected. You can see we have a total of Nicholas. That's 1. Rick is 2. Marnix 3. Seb 4. 4 drivers disconnected in this race. 5 drivers DNF'd. And 1 driver left down. So we basically have 10 drivers out of contention in this race. So it's just a running between the top 10 in this race. You can see between lobby issues and mistakes, getting beached on curbs. We're now down to just 10 drivers competing against each other in this Grand Prix. So yeah, it's a real shame. We also have the audio glitch. All of the glitches are coming out for this friendly event here in Brazil, and that is a shame to see. Hopefully it does get fixed, although I highly doubt it with the way the most recent F1 games have gone. But right now we have the battle for the lead between Jam, Blaze and Gage, with LFR Scotty with that 3-second time penalty. But Jam has been able to hold on quite nicely. You can see that's the mistake there from Scotty. Thankfully is able to keep it on track, but Jam is holding off quite nicely up against 2 drivers who are on softer and fresher compounds of tyres. But Guiche, with these soft tyres, you really expect him to be making more moves. But it's now Blaze looking for the inside for turn 1. He's able to get that move done before the braking zone. Hyper sets the fastest lap of the Grand Prix, up in P5, so he's now back to being the lead IRT driver. This race is a bit all over the place, but there's plenty of action still to watch. We have Guige on the back of Jam, and looking to make a move soon enough. You can see those 20 lap old hard tyres are really not holding on well for him. IRT Mats now steals the fastest lap of the Grand Prix away from Hyper down in P12, and that was a 108.2 if I'm not mistaken. So you can see now LFR Guige on the back of Jam. He's losing quite a bit of time behind him, so he really needs to get past on this next main straight and on the run down into turn 1. And he does not want to lose DRS to the leader, Blaze. So let's see if he can do just that. He gets up on the curb, and it looks like not a lot of people learning that you shouldn't touch that curb. I'm noticing a lot of inconsistency and silly mistakes from these drivers. But this is what these events are for, to really iron those out and get yourselves ready for the events where it really matters. So it's a good learning opportunity for all of the drivers, as most league racing seasons have not yet started. So yeah, they really need to iron out those mistakes, and this is what that race is for. So let's see now. You have Guige in P3, and Jam, he's not able to get past Jam just yet, because Jam on those old hard tyres has lost so much time to Blaze ahead of him, and we only have 3.5 laps to go in this race, and Guige needs to get past soon, otherwise he won't have a chance at this race win. Right now Blaze, who is on the 2-stop, along with a lot of other drivers, but a planned 2-stop, is doing very nicely for himself in this race and could be looking at a race win. Hyper is now in this battle. He's caught up to the back of LFR Scotty, and as you can see here, by the time penalty, he has got 3 seconds. So right now he is battling it out with LFR Scotty for P4 in this race, and let's see if he can make a move. He has 3% left on his ERS, and you can see that's a late dive there from LFR Scotty, and they make contact with each other, thankfully get away without DNFing. And I think someone sent in the chat there, thanks for commenting. I think that was Luke Lira. It's my pleasure. It's been an absolutely amazing race, and I'm glad I was able to to be here to commentate on it. Sadly, there's been quite a few lobby issues, but this race has still produced some great action nonetheless. So you can see now, moving towards the end of this Grand Prix, we only have 2.5 laps to go, and LFR Jam has now been overtaken by Guige, as which happened when we were focusing on the battle between Hyper and Scotty. I think that was a bit of a mistake there from Guige, a little bit of a correction. Blaze is now running away. Guige has 2 laps to catch up 2 seconds, but his softs are well past their best, and Jam could even look into overtaking him. He has 40% ERS compared to Guige's 15%. So Guige isn't even guaranteed a P2 here, so Blaze has got this in the bag, unless he makes a sudden mistake. Hyper now dives down the inside, they make contact with each other, and Scotty has been spun round, so not the cleanest move there from Hyper. Gets him up into B4, and it looks like that is going to be a best result for him, but you can see there, I'm not sure who that was. I think it was, I'm really not sure who that was, just stopped on track there almost. Who is that actually? We're going to check it out. One of the IRT drivers going really slowly, and I can't actually figure out who it is. Oh, it must have been Patser Japser, as he is just retired from the session. But Hyper is now coming up on the back of LFR Jam, but even if he does make a move, that 3-second time penalty will demote him right back down to B4 in this race. IRT Seb is battling it out with LFR and Marnix. Never mind, they're both disconnected from the session, so we're going to move right back to the action here. Jam makes a mistake and is overtaken by Hyper on the penultimate lap of the Gree, on the penultimate lap of the Grand Prix, and Jam is now going to try to fight back. He goes down the inside into turn 1. Old hard tires versus old softs. It looks like the old softs are coming out on top here with Hyper with the better exit. You can see he's using all of his ERS now to try and go down the inside into turn 4 on Hyper now, and looks like Hyper just about keeping it on track, squeezes Jam to the inside, does not leave enough space on the inside, and that is exactly what's going to happen when you don't leave space on the inside line. So Hyper goes from P4 to P5, and his chances of that P4 are now down the drain, whereas Jam lucky to get away with that. Just a bit of karma there for Hyper, as you do, and that looks like he's going to maintain that podium position. LFR Blaze is now rounding out the final term and getting ready to claim the trophy, as he is going to come across the line to win the Brazilian Grand Prix. It's been a great performance from him after starting all the way down in P7. He was able to make it work, and he got himself that P1 victory. Guige in P2, LFR Jam in P3. This is the only battle left on track, but sadly both of the drivers are disconnected from the session. But you can see now your podium. LFR Blaze, LFR Guige, LFR Jam, and LFR Scotty are your top 4. So LFR were able to get the top 4 positions there. Hyper coming in P5 with his teammates Steban and Chris in P6 and 7. LFR Rom coming P9, and from there downwards everyone is disconnected apart from IRT Matt, who comes across the line to finish P11. So yeah, that's a shame. There was only 10 drivers there in the end after all the disconnects, but it was a good performance from Blaze nonetheless. He still had to battle it out with people such as Jam and I'm forgetting his name, LFR Scotty in the end there. So yeah, it was a great race between the two teams, but it looks like LFR are the ones who come out on top. So that was a great race from everyone. A couple of mistakes here and there with a couple of dive bombs too, but who doesn't love a few good dive bombs? So there is your podium, and a very eventful race, I must say. But I hope you all enjoyed that race. And that is the friendly event 10v10 here in Brazil between IRT and LFR. Big shout out to both of the teams to competing in this one and really giving it their all. You can see there the fast lap of the Grand Prix goes to IRT Mats with a 108.8, and that is quite a quick time. just 1.5 seconds off of the pole time that LFR Marnik set, a 107.3. So you can see there, the most penalties anyone got was actually 3 seconds. So fair play to them for not getting more than 6 warnings, as it's very easy to do here, especially with short tracks. You really have to push the limits to find the time, but only a couple of drivers getting those 3 warnings and getting themselves the 3-second time penalties. But the top 3 were all able to keep it consistent enough and stay away from those pesky track limit penalties. But yeah, that was a great race. I hope you did enjoy that one. And hopefully we can see you on this channel more for more LFR esports events. And good night, everyone.